tutapata furaha na raha tutapata. Three, go.
Furaha na raha tutapata, furaha na raha tutapata, furaha na raha tutapata, Yesu anaporudi, Yesu anaporudi, Yesu anaporudi, furaha na raha tutapata, Yesu anaporudi, tutaimba nyimbo za shangwe kuu, tutaimba nyimbo za shangwe kuu, tutaimba nyimbo za shangwe kuu, Yesu anaporudi, Yesu anaporudi, Yesu anaporudi, furaha na raha tutapata, Yesu anaporudi, hapana machozi arudipo, hapana machozi arudipo, hapana machozi arudipo, kwa wateule wake, Yesu anaporudi, Yesu anaporudi, furaha na raha tutapata, Yesu anaporudi.
Tutaomba. Lord in heaven above, we come to thee as weak vessels, O Lord, in thy presence at this particular time, O Lord. May you be with us, O Father. Thank you for guiding us since morning until this particular time, O Lord. As we are starting this session, O Lord, we request and ask, O Father, that you be with us and you lead us through, O Father. Be the speaker of the day, O Lord. May you guide her, O Lord, through, so that whatever she's going to tell us today only cometh from thee, and be, O Lord, what you intended that thy people may hear today, O Father. Continue uplifting us, continue widening our minds, continue widening us so that we know you better as our Father and our God, O Lord. Lead us through, because I pray in Jesus' name. Wangapi wananisaidia kukaribisha mgeni wetu wa leo? Karibu.
I'm told we are supposed to be done by 4:30. So I'm trying to set my stopwatch at that time. And now I can't figure out where the stopwatch is. Happy Sabbath. Happy day. Wow. Where did we lose everyone? We lost so many in just an hour's break. We hope they are somewhere and they'll be joining us. It is wonderful to be in the house of the Lord. It is nice to be in the house of the Lord. It is nice. It is wonderful. I had an intention of, just a minute. I had an intention to speak about a different subject, but I feel that what we are going to share would be more relevant and would meet the expectation of many this afternoon. And I trust that God is going to guide us so that even in this, his purpose may be met. I am a mental health professional. In mental health, we have psychiatrists who deal much with confirmation of disorders and prescriptions of medication. So the psychiatrists deal much chemically. I am a psychologist, and as a psychologist, I deal much with what the resources the person brings. So as a psychologist, I don't introduce something, but I tap into your resources. Now for the psychiatrist, it would be, which disorder does this person have? For me as a psychologist, it's more about which person does this disorder have? Because therapy starts from what person walks in with what disorder. So this afternoon, we want to consider issues of mental health. My training is in both counseling psychology. That's what I did in my undergraduate. And in my master's, I've trained as a clinical psychologist. And I find those two complementing each other greatly. And I thank God for taking me to that path. Because for all the knowledge that he has given me, I use it first for his glory. Because if it is not for him, then it is vanity. So always, often in my work, I have often prayed that, Lord, remind me of my vow that I shall not consider money before service to God and service to mankind. And I am happy, and I'm happy that this afternoon I have this platform to share a little bit about mental health. So this is what we are going to do. I will make this presentation, and I'm going to talk about mental health in its relationship to our Christian walk, more so to our theme for this quinquennium, I will go. And then I will do a brief introduction into what mental illness is. I'm allowed to move this, isn't it? What mental illness is, and open it up for the congregation to ask questions about mental health, about mental illnesses. And we believe that the Spirit of the Lord is here to answer each and every of those questions as they shall come. So we pray. Once again, we are here, O Lord, to listen from you as you teach us about mental health and its relevance in our Christian walk. Please take control and speak thou unto your children. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Mental health, an invisible problem within the church. Is mental health an invisible problem within the church? So maybe when we've gone through this, we'll be able to see more clearly how it plays in our families, in us as individuals, and in the ministry of Christ. So there's an icebreaker there. I didn't bring my ball. I don't know how I forgot my ball. So now I'm going to have to depend on volunteers. If I had my ball, I would throw it on anyone, and if it got you, would be telling us something about something. So there is that icebreaker. And those of us who are not intending to answer, just thank God the ball is absent. So we'll depend on volunteers. You are, put it on slide something so that it's wider, yeah? Is that better? Yes. So you are going to a desert land, and there are things that you need to carry with you to a desert land. So let's assume this desert land is somewhere in, which desert place do we know? You are going somewhere in the villages of maybe Mandera, Marsabit, yeah? For how long do our crusades last nowadays? 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We've moved from the 1 week. So you are going to a desert land for a 2 weeks crusade. You don't expect any provisions there at all. No food, no water, no nothing. Everything that you'll need to use, you will have to carry it. Yeah? So you have 2 categories of things to carry. One are essentials, vitu za kawaida. Yeah? And then you are allowed to have 3 additional items. Apart from your clothes, your medicines, your toiletries, you are then allowed to carry how many additional items? Anakuanga mwalimu ya watoto. And you know, we love it when we stop somewhere and you finish for us. How many additional items? Good. One is for survival. The other one is for entertainment. And the third one is for luxury. You choose what you want to carry, the additional items. For survival, for entertainment, and for luxury. Only that, of these 3 things, including your essentials, it should be a load you can carry on your own to the desert land. What will you carry? And why will you carry what you will carry? Oh, I wish I had a ball. Because I want answers. What will you carry for survival, for entertainment, and for luxury? And why will you carry it? Who is ready with an answer? The ball is missing. Who has an idea what they would want to carry? You have to carry something. One for survival, one for entertainment, and one for luxury.
I'll carry water.
He'll carry water. For survival?
Yeah, it's for survival.
How much of it?
However little it is.
However little it is.
How long are you going to stay there?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And you can carry 5 liters.
5 liters.
It will be 2
5 liters of water. Thank you, Elder. So Elder is carrying 5 liters of water. He's going for 3 weeks on a daily basis. We should take between 6 to 8 glasses. 4 glasses makes a liter. So in 5 liters, he has how many glasses? 20 liters. Therefore, he has water enough for 5 days. What happens the remaining 5 days? How long can we survive without water? Tuko na daktari, madaktari. How long can a human body survive without water? Elder, another answer is here. There was a hand here. Here. Yes.
Oh, I wanted to talk about water, but now for survival also, I will need some assorted fruits.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
He'll carry fruits. He'll carry assorted fruits. And if you're going to a desert land, then a desert land is a very hot place, yeah? And so maybe he'll carry enough fruits, but I wonder how long they would stay before they go stale. What did you carry? Nobody's carrying nothing for entertainment and luxury. And that is very typical of Africans, yeah? We are very functional. Yes?
For survival, I hope you don't restrict me to one item.
No.
Okay, just like Elder would carry water.
Mm-hmm.
For shade at least, I'll carry an umbrella for entertainment.
She'll carry an umbrella so that she has some luxury in the desert. Huh? She has some shade.
Yes.
Yes, Elder.
For entertainment, can carry a radio.
He carries a radio for entertainment. Are there solar-powered radios?
Yes.
Oh, they are. That's a brilliant idea. So for entertainment, he carries a radio. Wow, I never knew there solar-powered radios. Any other person who wants to try? She's carrying water, and she's carrying an umbrella for luxury. Yes, sir? And a radio for elders' entertainment.
Happy Sabbath.
Happy day.
Now, before I respond, may I just get a clarification? The desert tour that we are going for, is it for the ministry or we're just going for any other duties?
For ministry.
For
We are
ministries.
Adventists. We are going. I will go.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, as for me, now that we are going to the desert, like my colleagues have said, I'll carry enough water that I'll use for that time. That is for survival. And then under survival, I'll also carry my Bible and I together with me. Then entertainment, because of my age, and maybe the ones that we are going to interact with, I'll carry a ball. And then finally for luxury, I'll carry my phone with me or a laptop. Thank you.
Wow. So he carries a ball, and then he carries a laptop or a phone. Are there solar-powered laptops and solar-powered phones? Oh, there are. And he carries lots and lots of water. Now we realize that what we need for our own survival, for the survival of the body, water and food, we cannot carry much of it on our own to the desert land because it's a huge luggage, isn't it? So we carry just a little, what we are able to carry. And then we have the radios for entertainment, we have our Bible for entertainment, and then we have balls for entertainment, we have an umbrella for luxury, and somebody is carrying a sleeping bag so that they can at least lie down and have a sleep. The idea about this icebreaker, there are two ideas. One, survival is essential. Survival is essential for the mind. Luxury and entertainment are equally very important for survival. Now, most of the time, we concentrate on our survival. How do we meet our basics? Shelter, food, and mkazi inaisha hapo. And then the rest we say is not necessary. So you are living a life that is very functional. Within the family, it's very functional. Even outside, it's functional. What I need to do for survival. You never considered entertainment, and you never consider luxury. These three components go together. And for us to live holistically, we have to bring them both at par. So that when I'm talking about survival, then I know that I cannot survive effectively without entertainment and without luxury. But the bigger picture is this. I cannot be entertained if I am not alive. Can I? I cannot have luxury if I am not alive. And so if I carried water for 5 days, and then I have how many other days to go? 8 other days to go without water, I will not be in a position to use my ball, to listen to my radio, or to browse through my phone. Yet, the things that I need to survive physically up to this level are physical things that either perish or get finished. So are there things that I can carry that do not perish and do not get finished. Survival is not based on physical availability of the commodities that we need. It is in the mind. And so if I'm set off for a journey towards the unknown with very little resources, then what I need to harness more are the powers of the mind, so that I am able to use the power of my mind to even adjust the intake of the water that I need. I'm able to harness the power of the mind to force a regulation of even my consumption of food. So that if I were taking so much in a day, then I can carry boxes of biscuits and train my mind to be contented in 2 per day. So the much that we need to survive in the physical is incomparable to how much power we need to harness in our minds to survive. Now we need things to survive our times. We need physical resources for the mission that we are going ahead to. But that cannot be compared to what we need to embed in our mind. And so whatever we would consider for survival, for entertainment, for luxury, are supposed to be abilities of the mind to cope, to adjust, to be innovative, to create. So I would be in the desert, and when my mind is filled with skills, then I know how to get water in the desert. And if there's completely no water, then my mind is so empowered spiritually that I know that God provides water in the desert. We have a quinquinium, dim, reach the world, I will go. Acha nijaribu hiyo. When I say reach the world, you say I will go. Reach the world, I will go. Now it is reach the world, I will go. Last year, we were going with the everlasting gospel. This year, we are going with the 3 angels message. See you mko up to date nayo. Reach the world, I will go with the everlasting gospel. I will go with the 3 angels message. We have all been called to go. We are chosen by God. And Ellen White says that as God's representatives among men, God does not choose angels who have never fallen, but human beings, men of like passions, with those they seek to save. She continues to say that when Christ needed to save us, he had to take on to humanity. And therefore, who is supposed to go? Me and every one of us, regardless of where you have reached in your spirituality, regardless of what you have, regardless of the burdens that you bear, regardless of what you have heard about yourself, you have work to do. And it is so serious that she says that everyone has work to do and no one can be a substitute for another. No, sometimes we always say that Mungu akona watu wake hata kama utaki atafanya. The reality is what you are supposed to do lays undone so that you stand to answer for it when Christ comes. If someone does it for you, it will not remain undone, yeah? If there was a soul you were to save and someone does it for you, what happens? There is no case against you. Siye ilifanyika. She says, no one can be substitute for another. Each one has a mission of wonderful importance, which he cannot neglect or ignore, as the fulfillment of it involves the will of some soul, and the neglect of it, the war of one whom Christ died. Every follower of Jesus has work to do in the mission work of Christ. Yet there is a problem. What is the problem? Let's read those of us who can see it. Those who should have been the light of the world have shed forth but feeble and sickly beams. Let's leave it at that. We are chosen by God. We all have work to do. And we have not neglected the work. We have taken the work. Si tumechukua kazi ya Mungu. And we are in the field working. But she says, we are shouting forth a light, yes, but it is feeble, it is sickly. That in other words means that we are not doing the much that we have been given the potential to do. So what is the problem? Why are you a choir member who is less effective? Why are you a deaconess that is not effective? Why are you a church elder who is not available? Why are you a church treasurer who is not able to keep up to date the books of the church? Why are you a preacher of the word of God who is still seated on the bench? Why are you a mother who is not effective in her mothering and raising the children? Why are you a father who is not effective in provisions and care and providing security to the children? What you are shedding your beams. You are present. You are doing something, yes. But White says it is feeble and it is sickly. So why do you think you are not at your greatest potential? Let's engage. Or what do you think makes us not be at our greatest potential? The ball. Somebody would be talking right now. But let's wait for a volunteer. Why do you think that we are not able to shade beams as bright as God has put in us? I wish I could get some reasons from the congregation. Let me ask Martha. At least I know her name. And then I'll just say another name. In whichever language, if it is yours, you answer. That becomes the ball, isn't it? Yes.
Fear.
She says there is fear. I have the beams to shade, but natoa kwa kidogo kidogo kwa sababu niko na uoga. Where is that fear? Where do we feel the fear? If you ask where is your fear, where would you touch? Where? Where? I wish you'd be like children. You know, if a child is grieving and they tell you, it is very painful the way I miss my mom, and you ask them, where do you feel that pain? They'll very first point even to their leg. It's here, daktari, I feel it here. And you can use that here to help the child process the emotional pain for losing their mother. So let me hear, where do you feel your fear? Yes, Charles?
There is a spirit that is always engaged in the mind that when I do this, so and so is going to, how is so and so is going to feel about me. So it's actually in the mind.
And that reminds me of that verse where God says, for I have not given you a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. Have you read that verse? Yes. He says fear. And so according to what Charles say, if you'd ask him, show me where your fear is, you'd say, it's here, daktari. I feel the fear here. And someone else would say, it is here, because I can even feel the pressure on my chest. Si wakati unaogopa unasikia hata kifua imekaliwa na kitu. Yes. Any other reason? Yes, dear? Inadequacy. You feel you are not enough. You are not competent. You feel that I don't know so much. So if I get up here to talk about mental health, labda nitaulizwa swali nishindwe alafu nitaonekana. And so where do you feel your inadequacy? Where would you feel your inadequacy if you had to point like a child? She would feel her inadequacy here because her heart would be throbbing. Inadequacy. How do we cure inadequacy? How do we cure issues of incompetence? By gaining skills. And where do we store those skills? Yes, Elder?
I also wanted to add that we may not bear the light as we ought to do because we lack faith. The Bible tells us that if you had faith
Yes.
like that of a mustard seed,
Yes.
you would move mountains.
Wonderful.
So we lack the confidence
Yes.
that then takes us to doubt what God has said about our potential, about what we can do.
And so Elder is just saying that we would be inadequate because spiritually, the faith factor is not being felt by us. We know faith. We can define faith, but we're not feeling it. And so we will not walk into the unknown without water, without a radio, without something, because we don't believe that God can really provide for this, like the ravens provided for Elijah. You remember God provided food and then even provided a shade. Yeah? And even when the shade was taken away, he still sustained, didn't he? So we have the light, but we are shedding feeble and sickly beams for so many reasons. And the question is, we have been called to go, to reach the world with the everlasting gospel, with the 303 angels' message. But are we fit to go? What does it take to be fit? We have to prepare. Preparation is key if we are to be fit to go. The scripture tells us that Jesus in Matthew chapter 4, verse 1 to 14, after his baptism, 40 days into the wilderness, he went to prepare. And when he had prepared, when he came back, he was tested. If he was prepared enough to move into the wilderness of sin and the darkness that had engulfed in the world. Saul, after meeting Christ, he loses his sight upon the great light that befell upon him. And then he had to prepare. He spent 3 days blind and several with Ananias. And Ananias was enabling him to prepare, telling him, who is this person that you had met? What is this person about? How much love that this person has? The wonderful news of the grace that God had for Paul. And Paul spent time preparing. And then in the story of the 10 virgins, we find in Matthew chapter 25, we see 5 foolish ones and 5. You know, they knew that the master would come. See, they all knew. Si walienda huko pamoja with the same agenda. Didn't they all have lamps? But you know, some of them had thought that it might take long. We need the Spirit. We need more oil. Others thought that what's in the lamp? As long as the lamp is burning, I'm okay. I'm okay. And so on Sabbath, probably they met and they sang, this little light of man, I'm going to make it shine. And when the women are singing with their candles, all the candles are not going to burn out at that moment. And when you see them, they all have candles. And so they all have little lights. But there were 5 who knew that we need more. And we see the tragedy of unpreparedness. Are you fit to go? Preparation has to be holistic. In what way? It has to touch the spirit where fear probably comes from. It has to touch the spirit where lack of faith is supposed to be embedded in. It has to touch your mind and it has to touch your body. Preparation must be holistic. Now, the body is the physical. Mwili huu wakunyauka kama maua. The body is physical. And the mind is that element of a person that enables you to be aware of the world around you, that enables you to experience the world around you, to think and to feel. Your mind is the faculty of consciousness and thought. So your mind is not physical. If I ask you, show me your mind, you would never show me where your mind is. But obviously you will touch the head, which shows a very close relationship between the brain and the mind. And of course, your spirit is also non-physical. So why are we shedding feeble and sickly beings? One could be that we are unprepared. We are out to work, but we are not preparing. We are not planning, what do I need to bring with me in this mission? What do I need to let go of because of the heaviness or the burden of it that it is? Who do I need to go with? What are the powers that I need to harness in my mind, the training that I need? When you go for, those of us, kuna mtu ametrain mwanajeshi? The training that they go through is not for physical. It is that their mind may capture the ability to endure. And so maybe we are not prepared because we have ignored the magnitude of the duty that we have in our spaces as parents, as mothers, as husbands, as fathers, as children, as youths, as ministers of God in this vineyard. Or probably we are not able to shed feeble, we are shedding feeble and sickly beings because of the wounds of the past, our past experiences. You know, when you say, I'm fearful, I can tell you for a fact that you are not born fearful. But something happened when you are growing up that emphasized fear in you. And it is that fear that comes out. You are an angry person. I can assure you, it is not that your father was angry, so you are born angry. You learned anger as a coping mechanism, or you were wounded somewhere in life, so you became an angry person. And so we may not be shedding lights as we should because we have wounds from the past and we are wounding in our present experiences. You might prepare very well for a safari, but what happens when your leg breaks? Or when a dagger is drove through your heart? Or when your head hurts? So you probably have the right light. You have prepared very well. You have honest powers of the mind, but you are not able to shed proper light because of the wounds of the past. And you know, the wounds of the past are the ones that draw us back even more. The wounds of the past are the ones that make you experience your current circumstances with the magnitude that you are experiencing it. Because whatever happens now, you tie it to yesterday and tie it, and that line is so vicious it doesn't end. And maybe we are not able to shade proper lights because of the battle for the forehead. The battle for the forehead. Now we see that there's a strong battle for the forehead. While Satan cannot read our minds, he can influence our thoughts. Can we see that? Okay, let's do this again. While Satan cannot read our minds, he can influence our... That keeps you awake. Ukinimalizia unakaa macho. Thus begins the race to win or lose against the battle of sin. In 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 13, the Bible says that therefore prepare your minds for action. Prepare your... Is it prepare your body? Prepare your mind for action. Keep sober in spirit. Fix your hope completely on the grace to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. He continues to say, be sober and be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, is a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. Now, Peter points us to where we need to channel our preparation. Because there is a battle for the mind. Why is there a battle for the mind? And how do we know that there's a battle for the mind? In Deuteronomy, when God gives his commands and his precepts to the children of Israel, he tells them that this you shall impress words of mine on your heart and on your soul, and you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as what? They shall be as frontals. As frontals. That which guides. They shall be as frontals on your forehead. So when God gives us his precepts, when he teaches us about faith, when he teaches about keeping his commandment, when he calls us into mission, he is saying that you shall bind this in your heart, but they shall be as frontals on your forehead. Now God's word aims at the forehead, and Satan also aims at the forehead. Where does Satan aim? At the forehead. Revelation 13 verse 17. Now those who are close at this side, let us read it together so that you also wake up kidogo. Let's read it. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one who has a mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Revelation 13 verse 16. And he causes all, the small and the great and the rich and the freemen and the to be given a mark. Where? Or where? The forehead. And salvation depends on the forehead. Let's read that. Revelation 7 verse 3. Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have seen the bond servants of our God where? On there? Revelations 9 verse 4, let's read. They were told not to hurt the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor any tree, but only the men who do not have the seal of God where? So the mark of the beast aims where? And the mark of God aims where? The seal of God? And so maybe we are not shedding the right beams because there is a battle for our forehead. Can you touch your forehead? So that I'm sure we all know what the forehead is. So why the forehead? Why is there a battle for the forehead? There is the picture of how our brain is compartmentalized or divided, yeah? We have the frontal lobe. I'm not good with the colors, but ukisikia color inaenda karibu na hiyo ujue ni hapo ninasema. The frontal lobe, it's almost orange in color. Can you see it? Yes. And then, where is the frontal lobe? If you are to show me your frontal lobe, you would touch here. Is this the forehead? Where the enemy wants to put a mark on? And where God wants to put a seal on? So this is your frontal lobe. And then there is the parietal lobe. And then we have the occipital lobe here. And then we have the temporal lobe that I can't show you because it is somewhere there. Yeah? What are the functions of the frontal lobe? The frontal lobe is important for cognitive functions and control of voluntary movement or activity. So if you are to think, to analyze, to make decisions, to decide where to go, what to do, to decide whether to, everything that you do, your cognitive functions, things that you do with your thinking mind, it happens in the frontal lobe. And so it is important for Satan that he compromises your thinking faculties, that he compromises your decision-making faculties, that he compromises your ability to critically think, that he compromises your ability to analyze the words of God spoken from the pulpit and see how it applies in you. He puts you so debased that you are so comfortable with your life the way you are living. In fact, if somebody was to speak here and speak against something that you are doing, the devil has put a mark on your brain, so you will quickly discard it because he has given you a false sense of comfort. The reason why there is an aim, a battle for the frontal lobe is because it is there where you will consider messages spoken and make a decision for Christ or for man. When we spoke in the morning about obeying God or obeying man or obeying ourselves, it is there where decisions are made. And so how does he compromise it? It takes away the health that God puts in the frontal lobe. And that is why we are talking about mental health. Of course, we have the parietal lobe that processes information about temperature, taste, touch, and movement. And we have the occipital lobe that is responsible for vision, that the temporal lobe that processes memories and integrates them with sensations of taste, sound, and sight, and touch. The frontal lobe, as I've said, is very important. And that is why when God seeks to put a seal on men, he doesn't look for your parietal lobe. He looks for your forehead, where your frontal lobe is. And Satan knows that is where everything happens. So that is where he also pulls a stool. And he sits and pulls his feet on top of the other one. Once he is seated there, you're thinking, how you analyze your understanding of the word of God, your understanding of the spirit of prophecy, everything is debased. And so you are here, but you'd never grow because he has put a mark where? On the frontal lobe. It doesn't have to do much. It just has to normalize everything wrong so that even in the church, everything wrong seems right. And we say we are saved by grace, for all are fallen short of the glory of God. And nobody now there stands on a hill the way Isaiah calls to speak against what is not right in the house of God. It is in the frontal lobe that the faculties that makes the mind sits. The reason why there is that battle is because of the power of the mind. The mind is so powerful, you can't imagine it. The mind is so powerful that it affects our body. Ellen White says that the relationship which exists between the mind and the body is very intimate, that when one is affected, the other one sympathizes. So you are fearful, but you have a running stomach. Have you experienced that? You are shocked, but your legs give way. Mguu inaenda, unaanguka chini, tunaokota wewe. Isn't it? You are sick, but then depression settles in. We cannot tell apart, remove the mind from the body and say that one can be healthy, the other one can be unhealthy, but we are still healthy. There is no health without mental health. She says that sickness originates from the mind, that a great deal of sickness which afflicts humanity has its origin in the mind and can only be cured by restoring the mind to health. Now think about all of them. Think about all the chronic illnesses, from cancer to diabetes to blood pressure to whatever. It comes from the mind. Because it is what happens in the mind that disturbs the equilibrium of the body and either sets off an illness or worsens it. The mind affects our emotions. Our mind influences our thoughts, and our thoughts influences our emotions. And we can be so engrossed in our emotions that we completely fail to serve. Have you been so sad that you can't come to church? Or you come to church, but you can't even get up for the prayer? Ile wanasema, mzee anasema tusimame sisi yote tufanye nini? Tuombe, but you have completely no strength in your feet to stand. The mind affects our emotions. The mind affects our personality. And when we talk about personality, it's about our character, our enduring character traits. Who you are, how you respond to issues, how you perceive things, how you respond to difficult emotions. Personality is a sum total of who you are. And our personality can support or be a hindrance to God's work. Now, for us to be fit to go, then it means that every aspect of our existence has to be restored to health, starting from the mind, the body, and the spirit. Now, you see, the mind is very small up there. The body and the spirit are bigger, but ideally it is the mind that is in control. And so there is a battle for which part of your head? About your forehead. And that introduces us to mental health, because mental health is about the care of the mind, afya ya akili. Mali akili iko, yako inaweza kuwa hapa kwa hewa, mwingine yake labda iko. Afya ya akili, whichever place we can reach akili, yeah? And that is what mental health is about. And the simple definition of mental health is that it's a state of well-being where you are able, number one, to do what? Realize your abilities. Do you know that we have abilities and potentials we don't know? Siku moja kitu inakusukuma, unastuka, unasema haya, kumbe naweza. Mental health is when you are able to realize your abilities, you are able to cope with the normal stresses of life. You are able to cope. And the coping is not suppressing stresses. It is accepting the stresses of life, but you are able to cope. Coping means that there is stress, but you are able to remain functional in all areas of your life. In your social life, you are stressed, but you are not irritable. You are not bleeding on everyone around you because you are stressed. That is mental health. It is when you are able to work productively and make a positive contribution to your community. The National Wellness Institute gives a more holistic approach of mental health and gives 6 dimensions of mental health. And they say you are mentally healthy if occupationally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, and socially you are healthy. And so mental health is holistic health. And if mental health is holistic health, is it something that we need to have a conversation about? Of course, yes, we need to talk about mental health. Now, mental health is not just the absence of mental illness. If I would ask in this congregation, how many of us have mental illness? Maybe there are, but because of the stigma or for other reasons, we may not raise our hands. I would raise mine because I have mental illness. And I've been empowered enough to know that if I'm mentally ill, there's no difference between me and this other person who is physically ill. If I ask how many of us are mentally healthy, that's a question I should be able to answer. How many of us are mentally healthy? There's a hand there. This statement means that mental health operates on a continuum, operates on a range. On this far end, there is mental health. On the other far end, there is mental illnesses. But there is a place in between here that is either a sickness, neither is it health. And most of us operate on that continuum. Realize that Satan's tricks are subtle. Hakuji yote mimi ni shetani nimekuja kupambana na forehead yako, hapana. But he employs very subtle tricks that if you cannot recognize them, even the better. So a small stress here, a small problem in relationships there, a small difficulty to work there, a small emotional issue here, your inability to cope. And it just makes sure that we are not operating at our best. Mental health has 2 dimensions: absence of mental illness and the presence of a well-adjusted personality that effectively contributes to the society. According to data by World Health Organization, mental illnesses account for 30% of non-fatal disease burden. 30%. Imagine magonjwa yote. 30% yao sijui itakuwa ngapi. But mental illness accounts for 30% of diseases that don't kill. Now, they don't kill, but they debilitate. They make us not able to be productive, make us not able to achieve our greatest potential, make us not able to be effective in our contribution to the community. And they say that 10% of overall disease burden in the world, including those that cause death, 10% mental illness. Have you heard about people committing suicide? Now, it's not about that somebody committed suicide in their home. Of course, that brings a genetic factor. But they are sick. I see when people commit suicide, somebody shoots, kills his family and kills himself, and people comment on social media. Hey, na hiyo shida kidogo tu. Yani hangefanya because they are mentally ill. If you were to be given the burden that they had in their mind, you would do worse than them. They get there because they are mentally ill. The only way a 9-year-old can get the courage to get a rope, tie it up, and hang their neck on it is because they are not well. And so persons with mental illnesses and psychosocial disabilities represent a big, significant proportion of the world's population. And it is estimated that at least 1 out of 4 people shall experience a mental health problem in their lifetime. 1 out of 4. Tuko wangapi? Other facts about mental health is that mental health problems like alcohol abuse are among the 10 leading causes of disability in both developed and developing countries. Depression is ranked 3rd in the global burden of disease. Magonjwa yote namba 1 inakuanga cardiovascular diseases, and then number 2, which is number 2? Yeah? I didn't hear. Okay, and then there's number 2, and then depression comes number 3. The global burden of diseases, number 2 is a mental illness, and it is projected that by the time we get to 2030, depression will be number 1. Is that true according to what you see in your circles? According to what you are experiencing in yourself as a person on matters depression? That by 2030, number 1, depression. So what do we expect? More suicides. More homicides. Depression also is a precursor to other mental illnesses because people now medicate their depression by abusing substances and alcohol. So we are going to see a lot of alcohol and substance abuse, even in the church. That is what this says. So what are mental illnesses? These are disorders that affect how we think, how we behave, and how we feel. And the symptoms of mental illnesses vary from one to another. There are so many mental illnesses. They are in so many classes. There are 16 classes of them. We have bipolar and related disorders. We have autism spectrum disorder, the ones that affect children. We have depressive disorders. We have anxiety disorders. We have paraphilic disorders. We have impulse control disorders. Those are classes. And then under those classes, then there are very many specific disorders. We have disorders of learning, disability in learning, dyslexia, communication disorders. When I say learning disability, I'm reminded to pause and talk to parents. Hey, dear parent, how are you? Happy Sabbath. That child you send to school may not just be a stupid one. So when they come home, don't just be the parent who wants a report card. If it is good, you smile. If it is bad, you beat them. Don't beat them the way you were beaten. It didn't bear any fruit. In fact, some of us were destroyed by that kind of a beating. We have learning disabilities, and they are many. You need to sit with your child and understand, why are they not able to connect this and connect that? Why are they scoring 90 in math and are not able to get a 10% in Kiswahili? So when you send them to school and they come home, don't just be angry, umepata ngapi, unalipa pesa mingi, unafanya bure, una nini. Come slowly. Give your child time. Talk to them, and if there is need, you can seek help for them to know for a fact if there is a disorder in play or there's a social factor that is affecting their learning. We have impulse control disorders. And I know I'm talking to parents whose children are beyond the age of kususu na bado wana susu. So what do you do in your ignorance? When they wake up in the morning, simu na chapa au? Ukishamaliza kuchapa unamwambia, beba hiyo mattress yako uende uanike mchana. And you think that when you embarrass them and their friends see them, they will not susu that night. They will susu again because they are having a problem, which is a mental health concern. So there are so many mental illnesses, we can't go through all of them, but let's consider the causes. One is inherited traits. Mental illness is more common in people whose blood relatives also have mental illnesses. Let me explain this. There are genes that predispose us to mental illnesses. And so if those genes are in your bloodline, then you are vulnerable to mental illnesses. Vulnerability does not mean that you must have a mental illnesses. We always say that genetics load the gun, but what pulls the trigger? Lifestyle, choices, pull the trigger. Now, in my community amongst the Luo, if somebody committed suicide in your home and it was known, it would be difficult for you getting a wife or a husband from the place around there. They would be discouraged and told, "Duko watu wananyongananga." Is that Kiswahili? Yeah? Wananyo? Ejinyonganga. Now, the truth is not far from that because genes predispose us, isn't it? And so if you have a predisposition to depression, that it means that when life circumstances become tough, you are most likely to fall into a depression. So there is inherited traits. Then we have environmental exposures. Those are exposures right from what happens in here. When I was in my mother's womb, if my mother smoked tobacco, it got me. If my mother drank changa, it got me. If my father was violent and hit my mother on the tummy, it got me. If there was stress in the home and my mother's body was filled with stress hormones, where does it go? It got me. And so, nowadays we give birth to children who cry without an end. Is that your experience? Yani ukiingia maternity, ile maternity mama yangu alifanya kazi, ile miaka ulikuwa unaingia watoto na lala. Is that true? Children are born and they cry and cry and cry and cry. Some is because they are sad. They've been born sad with a lot of stress hormones in their body. So everything triggers them to cry. Some have been born impulsive because of the impulsivity of the parent or whatever the parent was consuming when they were in their mother's tummy. Some have been born with addictions. Wana mama wa Yesu, hallelujah. Wanasemanga S.D.A. hatukunywi pombe wala sigara. Lakini karibu na pombe na sigara tunakunywa nini? Chai na kahawa. And so you've given birth to a child who is addicted to the tea and the kahawa and the Coca-Cola. Somebody told women that when you're pregnant, you drink a lot of Coca-Cola, you give birth to a clean child. So this child comes out with an addiction. And with that addiction, when they're having withdrawals because you've stopped giving them the coffee and the changa and whatever you are giving them secretly in the tummy, they need it. Their body is craving for it. So they are not settled. So children cry without an end. So those exposures also include, beyond toxins, it also include experiences that we are exposed to when we are growing. How present was your mother when you were small? This is really targeting mothers. But how present was your father when you were small? Because parenting is about watumbili, isn't it? Even though Ellen teaches that the duty to raise children and train them belongs to who? When you are present for your child or absent, the way they perceive it is very different. It is not mommy has gone to work. How can a 3-month-old know that you have gone to work? They only know they are not good enough. Mommy has neglected me. So the experience that we are exposed to, be it neglect when we were babies, be it violence in our home, be it violence at school, whatever we are exposed to, losses, sicknesses, the pains of this world, are all possible causes of mental illnesses. And finally, another cause is brain chemistry. We have neurotransmitters and chemicals that carry signals from our brain to our spinal cord, and that brings the connections to every part of our body. And there is an equilibrium, there is a state of balance that should be in those neurotransmitters, either for reasons of drugs that we use or other factors or genetic predispositions. If there is an imbalance, a low or a high of it, then we are most probably to suffer mental illnesses. There are many, but those are the 3 main causes of mental illnesses. What are the complications of mental illnesses? When it is untreated, the number of complications can arise. 1, unhappiness and decreased enjoyment of life. Mental illnesses amongst our grandmothers and our mothers and our fathers at home. Depression. They are sick of everything and of nothing. There's no diagnosis, or it's one to another. Doctors are just guessing. And it's just depression. And that depression eventually kills them. Family conflicts. Sometimes you are fighting with your spouse over the same thing over and over again. Maybe si makosa yake is a mental illness. Relationship difficulties, social isolations, problems with tobacco, alcohol, and other substances of abuse. The reason why that happens is because many times we medicate for our emotional pain with substances. And so Adventists may not go for the alcohol or for the cocaine or for the hard drug, but they will go for prescriptive drugs. So once you are prescribed for Piriton or Betapin, and then you realize, when I take Piriton or Betapin, I relax and I sleep. So when you're not able to cope with your mental pain, what do you do as an Adventist? You fake a headache and go to the chemist and say, "Ni usia Betapin tatu." Or you buy Piriton, cough syrups, codeine. Most of the ones with codeine, that's why it has been withdrawn from the market, because of that kind of addiction creating behavior. Other complications include missing work or school, and in this instance, we'll say missing to take up the duty that God has called you for. Legal and financial problems. There are mental illnesses, bipolar disorder, if I may say, which is characterized by one being so low over a season, and then they are so high and excited during the mania. And when they are so high and excited during the mania, they can spend. Please don't fight with your husband who wakes up and clears the bank account and brings home a new car that you don't need. Or buys land somewhere that you are never going to develop. Or your wife who walks out in the morning and comes back home with 10 pairs of shoes that she will not wear. Na account amefagia. Don't beat them. Don't fight. Notice that there is a problem that can be resolved. There are issues with the poverty, homelessness. Those with mental health issues are not productive. They are not consistent. They are not effective. They are constantly losing jobs. Because there are gaps every time they are given a task to do, they don't finish. They don't do it as it was supposed to be done. They keep forgetting on what they were told to do. And so they get a job here, they are sacked, they get another one, they will come and say, "Niombeni shetani ananifuata, kakazi napata naenda," but it's because of the behavior that comes as a result of their mental illness. Self-harm and harm to others, including suicide and homicides. Every parent who is here, when a child says, "I'm suicidal," when a child says, "I am sad," when you see difference in behavior, be close to that child. Ask them to remove their shirt. You might just find they are cutting their arms. Because they have learned in social media, mental pain, you can cut and then the pain goes to where you have cut. And when that wound heals, the pain goes back to a place they can't reach. So they cut another one until they eventually kill themselves. Self-harm and suicide, weakened immune system. One thing that stress does is that stress lowers our immunity, heart diseases, and other chronic mental conditions. So is mental health or mental illness a concern in the church? Is it a problem in the church that is hiding? Do we have experiences of ourselves or of other people? Do we have experiences of things we don't understand happening in our lives? For example, conversion illness, where a child, it's common with children in schools, isn't it? Unaitwa shule, mtoto ni mgonjwa, unamleta, ni mgonjwa ukweli, lakini hakuna ugonjwa. Ama mtoto anaanguka tu. Alianza anaanguka. But very, very fast, the devil will tell you that's a demon, pelekea prophet, pelekea apostle, and you go picking more pseudo-demons that your child didn't even have in the first place. Now, mental illness is a real concern. What about mental illness? So I carried my hands when I asked, how many have mental illnesses? And I carried my hands, but I am not sick. I am recovered and hopefully fully recovered. Due to environmental exposures and life experiences, I developed a mental disorder called pervasive depressive disorder, or PDD. My first diagnosis was bipolar, and it was to be bipolar 2. But I think nilikata, unajua unakataa kitu kwa jina la Yesu. Yeah, and so I was diagnosed with PDD. PDD is persistent depression. It keeps coming. It's pervasive. It keeps coming. Sometimes there are triggers. Sometimes there are not triggers, but you find yourself very low. And unfortunately, I didn't know for a very long time. For a very long time. I was done with my undergraduate, but then we are forced to go into, and I'd been in a marriage for I think 9 years or so. And we are forced to go into therapy because you cannot support people are mentally ill if you're not mentally well. And everybody who is mentally ill is in denial. Umeshaona hata mlevi anakuambia sijalewa. Na mtu tunaitanga mwendazimu, though that is not what is proper. Anasema usiniangalie kama mwendazimu, si mwendazimu. Yeah. We are all in denial for one reason or another. And so I went to therapy, and my therapy asks me, why are you here? And I said, I'm here because I'm a mental health student, and I want to learn skills from you, and I want to do this because my degree depends on it. And she said, it's okay. And we started therapy, session 1, session 2. By session 3, I was a wreck of myself. And I started seeing myself like on a TV. And it was painful to me what I had taken my family through, how I have affected my children, especially the older one. Even up to now, you'd look at her and she looks very different in terms of self-esteem and what. Though I've been working with her through therapy. And I thought what I was seeing was not true. So my therapist asked for my husband to come to therapy with me, and he came. And he was asked, what do you see when you look at your wife? He says she's always sad. And he was, and that was news to me because me, I'm okay. I don't see the sadness. And he was asked, is she ever happy? And he said he can count how many times I've been happy for the entire 9 years. And he was asked, how does that affect you? And he said, I work with women. He's a gender and policy expert, so his work is about women. And he says, I go to conferences, and I sit with all the members of the parliament, all women members of the parliament, and I'm able to manage and cope. But when I come home, I sit in the car park, trying to figure out, how am I going to deal with this one woman? So he says, I was irritable, the children fear me, everybody fears me, I am always on the edge, I break down, and sometimes he goes and he's not sure that he will come back and find me because he thinks I might even kill myself. Imagine I didn't know. Imagine you don't know, even you. But that started a process of healing, acceptance and healing. And one time, and I would brighten up in church. When I get to church, I would brighten up. Mama wa Yesu, in ministry and in mission. And one time my child came and he was crying. And I asked him, Baba, why are you crying? And he tells me, you don't love me, or you don't love us the way you love other children in the church. I asked him, why did you say that? And he says, when you see them, you brighten up, you hug them. You don't do that with us. And I cried. Because, truthfully, I don't hug them. I don't relate. I give birth, anaekwa kwa kitanda yake. The remaining process he left for my husband and my help, who God brought as a blessing and as a miracle, because she's raised all my children. We've been together 14 years. And I cried because it was true. And I thought about how bitter I've been, how irritable and angry and depressed and everything. I was not progressing in anything. It took me 11 years to finish my bachelor's degree. 11 years. Who does that? And here I thought I was well. There is no stigma with mental illness. When you become aware, it's an opportunity for you to rise. And when I stand here, I have not taken medication for my illness, but have done a lot of psychotherapy. And the last time I had a major depressive episode was in January. The other day I was telling my husband, 5 months! 5 months! When you're in a major depressive episode, there is nothing you can do. Mine sometimes is so severe that if I needed to get out of the house, he literally has to do everything, from getting me to the bathroom. and ensuring that I'm dressed, and combing my hair. He finds it easy, my hair is cut short. And combing my hair and getting me out if I have to get out. Awareness is important. And having said that, in the first hour, I want to open for questions in the next hour. I think I've done 10 more minutes on top of the hour because of sharing my testimony. But I want to open up so that we can ask questions. Any question from wherever. There is none that is not good enough. There is no opinion that is wrong. There is no answer that is bad. No judgment, no ridicules. So I want to invite us for questions and to seek clarification. Kuna swali? Yes, there's a hand back there. Do we still have the microphones? Please help us get a microphone to the gentleman back there.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes. My name is Meshach Keremi, one of the members of this church. My question was about on bedwetting. You said it's a mental illness. And I'm trying to imagine, some of the things you said, they are hereditary. They are inherited from parents coming down like that. And when we were growing up, we could see some people who kept on bedwetting even when we went to the secondary schools.
Yeah.
Then after some time, they stopped. You could be having 3 or 4 kids. Some stop so early, others stop very late. But in terms of performance, I remember some of the boys who were with in high school, they were very smart in class. But they used to bedwet such that we used to give them zile vitanda za chini. I'm wondering, how is the connection between mental illness and bedwetting? The other one is...
between bedwetting and what? And mental illness?
Illness, yes.
Okay.
The other one is about marriage. Could we have a situation whereby the husband and wife are both sick and they don't know?
Yes.
So you try to elaborate and tell us, how do you save such a situation? Because you said those that are sick, they don't know that they are sick. Even in your own experience, you have said you didn't know that you were sick. So in such a situation.
Yes.
Thank you.
I start with the first one. I think because I didn't bring a note to do the questions, I'll just answer as they come, yeah? So the first one is there a relationship between bedwetting and mental illness? There are mental illnesses that are referred to as impulse control, inability to control impulses. And you find bedwetting falls under there. It has a scientific name. Now, if you have parented before, you would know if the bedwetting that your child is exhibiting is problematic. Because you know at what age are they supposed to have learned to control the impulse to wake up and... Most children who bedwet, they don't wake up and decide that they are bedwetting. When they're still learning to control those impulses, they would dream like they are up, they are going, isn't it? And then the susu comes and they wake up so late to help. But for people whose bedwetting is problematic, they are completely not able to even tell you when it is happening. Now, sometimes it's because of experiences. Stress is a factor that acts as a precursor to almost all mental illnesses. And stress can manifest in very many ways. So you can have a child who bedwets in school, but they don't bedwet at, or they bedwet at home, but they're not bedwetting in school. Now, in cases where stress is the factor, when that tension, the source of that tension is identified and diffused, then the child settles. The child is able to settle. But when it is problematic in the sense that it's a mental illness, I'm trying to get the name in my mind, then there has to be psychiatric and psychological interventions to help that child. Now, different mental illnesses relate differently. And there is also what we call comorbidity, where one mental illness most of the time occurs with another mental illness. For example, I would say alcoholism most of the time occurs with depression. So if somebody is alcoholic, you expect that depression can also be a factor at play. But one mental illness does not mean that someone should be disabled in other areas of mental faculties. Remember, we talk about the temporal lobe, and we said what it regulates. And so there is injury to that part of the brain, and it's not functioning properly. The functions that will be affected are just functions that are related to that particular part of the brain. So if intelligent faculties have not been touched, that child is very brilliant, but they bedwet. So what I'm trying to say on that issue is, don't rule all bedwettings as stubbornness or a child's laziness or refusing to listen or wanting beating or wanting embarrassment to change. When you realize that something looks problematic, looks abnormal, then now there is opportunity to get help. See a psychologist to carry an assessment. If there is need, they will then refer you to a psychiatrist to confirm a diagnosis and be able to prescribe if chemical intervention is necessary, or then get psychotherapeutic help from trained professional psychotherapists. Yes, Elder. Is that helpful? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the very nice presentation. In your case, it took many years, and your spouse was wondering what is happening. What is it that he could have done to actually help you in that situation much earlier now that was not done until your child came to realize that you're friendly to others but not them? Number two, the lady whose husband had lost her job.
Whose husband?
Who the husband has lost her job.
Yes.
You told us that story.
Or in the morning.
Yes. And they now racked ways of survival. And they got some jobs where whatever money they were getting was just not enough for them. And of course, the lady started making mistakes which costed her in terms of, again, getting a lot of penalties, paying a lot of money because of the mistakes. Until now, she resorted to go to the
poison.
To poisoning. What is it probably that could have been done by the husband to avoid this?
So let me answer the first question. What is it that my husband would have known and done before all the time that passed? I don't think it even has to start with him. What is it that I ought to have known? Is awareness. Awareness. As Embakasi Central, when we talk about health, we must talk about mental health. Because I will not know unless I am made aware. Is there a better time to know? Yesterday was, but today it is. So now you need to, one, look at your life circumstances. Look at your relationships. Are they working? Are they problematic? Look at your emotions. Are you stable or you are very erratic, very unstable? Are you irritable? Are you quick to anger? Are you able to hold back your anger? Are you able to postpone words you're supposed to speak for a time that is favorable? You need to look at your functionality within your family setup, within your relationships, and tell if you are okay. Now, the problem is the debasement that the enemy has brought to our minds. We don't want to look not okay. So anything that would make you look at yourself as not okay, you suppress it. If somebody comes up with a criticism about you, how do we respond? We respond violently. Now, the first thing, as I've said, awareness, then assess your behavior. And if your behavior is problematic to you, it is causing you to lag behind, or it is costing other people, then you need to be aware that something probably is wrong. Now, you may not have a mental illness, but you are operating within the continuum. You are not mentally healthy, neither do you have an illness that meets criteria for diagnosis. Maybe you are just stressed, and you've been stressed for a long time. Then you need to find help. You need to seek help. Another thing that my husband probably would have said earlier is, I don't think you're well, and I don't think it's because of me. Do you know what we do? We always look for a reason why we are sad and angry, isn't it? So we will find it in our mates. Don't we find it every day? Let me talk to a mama. During the time that we are having our menstruation, see, that's allowed to be spoken. You know, sisi watu wa health, tunaongeanga kila kitu kila mahali, na jina yake. I hope I'm not offensive. When we are having our menses, for some of us, we get a depression or an irritability or a moodiness that comes because we are having our menses. How many times have you considered that I'm irritable, I'm moody, or I'm depressed because of the menses? We always find something to put that feeling on. And most of the time, you go back to what your husband is not providing. Hata letangi, hata jana hajaleta, na juzi pia hakuleta. Like in this specific time of the month, now it's an issue. Or he's violent, or he didn't do that, or he dresses like that, or he snores, he doesn't brush his teeth, whatever. You find something to justify how we feel. Now, what he probably would have done is to have that conversation with me. He had waited for me to be happy. He had seen I'm never happy. I was irritable. The children feared me. Everybody in the house basically feared me. Probably he ought to have had that conversation, because sometimes the things you fear somebody doesn't want to hear, they would be so glad that somebody asked. When people say in church, oh, this person, kazi yake ni ngumu, ako moody, ako nini, do you know we get to hear that? But we are just wishing that somebody would come and say, hey, sister, so-and-so, I have heard and I've also seen that you are usually very moody. Could anything be the problem? That marks the beginning of a breakthrough for someone. So what we need to do to help others is to have conversations with them about behaviors that we feel are maladaptive. Have a conversation with that person that you feel is not acting normally. Don't just rule it out and say, anakuanga hivyo, hujamjua miaka mingi. Have a conversation with them. And if there is need, then seek professional help. There's an entire mental health department in KNH. And there is a free one, the youth center, that gives services for adolescents all the way to age 21. Imagine, free. Wewe ni kufika tu na transport yako na unarudi. But there's a mental health department. I think Kenyatta is the cheapest in terms of costs, and they charge 1,200 per session of psychotherapy. So there's a lot of help. And the best thing that as a church you can do, perhaps elders, is to have a group of people, like the people in the medical, so the people who are just willing to learn about skills in counseling and psychotherapy, so that they are able to help make possible diagnosis or help people cope with difficulties or something. And you have that group, plan for maybe a 1 week training, they are trained, and then you have a resource base here. And that will be so helpful because there's a great need. Did we say that in 2030, itakuwa namba ngapi? So this is the best time for us to start planning. Any other question? There are 2 hands. There's this one and that one. Is there another hand? So we have 2, and we finish with the 2 because we are beyond our time. So we'll take this lady here, then we take the gentleman at the back.
I was just wondering if there is a correlation or relationship between spirituality and mental health. Does it help to be a bit spiritual, or we just need to medical remedy?
So first let me correct that.
Now, mental health illnesses, mental health problems do not necessarily need medical interventions. There are illnesses. For my case, I would have taken medication if I chose to take medication. So there are those that can be treated medically, and there are those that are treated psychologically. Mental illnesses have triggers, and they have a place where they come from. And so sometimes medically treating alone is not effective because whatever keeps triggering it has not been diffused. And so there are approaches to dealing with mental illnesses. Medication is one approach. And then we have psychotherapy. And then we have physical therapy. And then we have spiritually augmented psychotherapy, which puts in perspective the spiritual aspects, the beliefs that somebody has, and uses that in therapeutic alliances to bring healing to the person that is suffering a mental illnesses. So the approaches to treatment of mental illnesses are many. Medication is just one of them. The next question was if there is a correlation between mental health and spirituality. I don't know why it's not showing you. Oh, we removed that thing already. Yeah, there is a correlation between mental health and spirituality. Spirituality can have a positive impact on mental health because it helps a person to tolerate stress by generating peace, purpose, and forgiveness. People who have a spiritual belief, a spiritual cushioning, are able to deal better with the stresses than people who do not have. That's why I was asking the morning, how do you deal with life if you don't have hope, if you don't have faith? Spirituality gives us resilience, gives us a hope. Spirituality causes us to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And spirituality can also have a negative impact on mental health. For example, if your child is sick, they're having a somatoform disorder where they're having conversions, or wanaanguka ama macho haioni. Umeitwa shule macho ya mtoto haioni na anaangalia hivi. And then you give it a spiritual perspective and ignore the medical perspective of it, because sometimes it's just mental health intervention that is required for the child to see. But then because of your spirituality, you say, hii lazima ikuwe ni mapepo. So sometimes when the spirituality disregards medical or mental health, the scientific whatever that we have, approaches that we have, then it can act negatively on someone. It delays the beginning of treatment, or altogether it ignores that there is treatment available. And then you walk from one jalemo to another prayer man until you start walking into houses of witch doctors and witches because you believe now this is a spirit, and kuna watu tuko hapa tunasemanga hapa S.D.A hakuna roho. Another, there was a last one there, then we come to a close. There was a hand at the back. Please lift your hand again so that we know where to bring the mic. Thank you. And by recognizing that spirituality plays a role, there are therapists that are spiritually augmented therapists to deal with mental illnesses. Yeah? Yes. No. There are psychotherapists by professional psychotherapists, but they derive value from a person's spiritual beliefs. So if you're a Buddhist, then we come from a Buddhist perspective. If you're a Hinduist, then we come from a Hinduist perspective, so that you're able to make meaning of your circumstances for that time and be able to diffuse your triggers. Yes.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Tony Aduda. Now, my question would be for a young man like myself, and I'm looking forward to get married. Do I have to wait until sometime in marriage so that I get to take my wife for counseling, or can we be in a position to do it before we get married? And you talked about the cost being 1,200 per session. One thing that I have realized as a barrier to mental treatment is the monetary constraint. People don't have finances. So how much does it cost for a whole treatment period to be done? And then the third thing is, I've been keen on the news lately, and I realized just the other day, Citizen had a news about the rising cases of pornography among children and youth. And we can't assume that they're not Adventist. Even Adventists here, some of us, or some, are addicted to things like pornography and gay and what have you. Can we categorize these kind of things under the mental illness subtopic? And if so, there is an interest that I wanted you to elaborate a bit on the third cause of mental health, that is brain chemistry. How can we handle this without going to medical perspective, like maybe going for drugs and what have you?
Thank you. You are listening greatly. And so you have to take me slowly, one question after the other. The first one was, as a young person, probably you are looking forward to marry. When is the right time to seek counseling? The right time was yesterday, before you even thought about looking for someone to marry. Now, I do premarital counseling for young people. And I realize that most of them come because the church says. Yeah? The S.D.A. church, you have to see your pastor for a number of sessions before. Yeah? And the kind of counseling that our pastors offer is the counseling based on what makes a marriage. How do you deal with finances? What is the purpose of marriage? It's more of educative. And most people, even when they seek now professional counseling for marriage, they come for the sake of the marriage. One of them, the girl or the man, said, lazima tuende professional counseling. And they come and we start. First 2, 3, 4 sessions. And I see a lot of red lights, red. I paint the room red. But they come so soon to the wedding. And then they wed. And then so soon after the wedding, my reds are now shining. They're not just red, but zimeanza kumulika. So what would I say to a young person seeking marriage? Don't start seeking counseling when you are going to marry. Psychotherapy is not for problems only. It is also for personal development. It is also for self-awareness. It is for preparation purposes also. There is what we call positive psychology, where you'd come into therapy so that you are able to grow in certain areas of your life. And one of the areas that everyone sitting in this congregation needs to grow in is in our social lives. How to handle relationships, how to deal with relationship issues, how to identify conflicts, how to resolve conflicts, how to emotionally regulate, how to communicate effectively. Now, the best time is before you plan to marry. But when you have planned to marry, I will urge you to seek professional therapists for that marital counseling. Now, see your pastor, see your elders, see your mentors. Like you'll get the best lady and the best man to mentor you. See, all those are resources you can't neglect. But see a professional therapist. Because when you come to see a professional therapist, I will take history. And I will start from where were you born? Who are your parents? Are they alive? Are they dead? If they are dead, what killed them? Was there substance addiction? Was there mental illnesses? Where did you go to school? How was your performance? And I'm able to see that growth. And I'm able to mark where there are gaps that would suggest dysfunctionality. And then I know what assessments to employ so that I'm able to diagnose a dysfunctionality. And then I raise awareness. Once I've raised awareness, and I have told you that you're predisposed to this, or you have this particular disorder, if you have even a personality disorder for that matter, then you know what are the low sides of those personality disorders. When they come into play in your relationship, your wife knows. Your husband knows. And they're able to understand and support you. So the best time to start is on your own, working on your own. The next time is right now because you are dreaming about having a spouse. And ensure that you seek professional counseling. Now, there is something about costs. Mental health is very expensive. And that is a conflict I have as an individual. And that is why I said at the beginning that then I choose to trust God, that I shouldn't look at the money more than service to God and to man. To afford. If you're coming to see someone for premarital, we have very good family therapists, marriage therapists, but they will charge nothing less than 7,000 for one session. And if you're planning a wedding, they would say, I see you for 6 sessions at the minimum, and if I see issues that need to be sorted, then the number of sessions may be more. If you are able to afford it, don't shun it simply because you think it's expensive. The costs that we pay, that our children pay, the marriages that are breaking, the marriages that are dysfunctional, you cannot quantify that if you are to compare with the costs. Now, when you are physically unwell, you would seek help intervention, isn't it? And there are some chronic illnesses where you'd be wanted to be in a clinic after 1 or 2 weeks. Or you are on a regime of medication that you have to sustain. Don't we pay for them? Yes, we do. And imagine the stress that you are neglecting, the depression that you are neglecting because you can't show where it pains, is the one that is worsening the condition that takes you to the doctor. If you were to look at the stress and the physiology of stress and how stress affects us and makes us ill, then you would pay for a psychotherapist to help you get coping skills for your stressors before you start paying the doctors for medication that cannot bring help until your stressors are either eliminated or you have learned to cope productively with your stressors. So there is a cost factor. Therapy is not cheap, neither is mental illness affordable. The next second question. So they are in the 16 categories of mental illness. We have addictive, substance-related addictive disorders, where we have addictions of substances. But we have behavior addictions, such as pornography, such as gambling, such as what other behavior addictions do we have? Social media, phone addiction. I know people here are addicted to phones. Take that phone away, they lose bearing of life forever. Social media addictions, even amongst our young people. Who is here and they've bought their 15-year-old a phone? They're adolescent, you bought them a phone, a smartphone, because it's trending. See, it's trending. See, now parents buy smartphones for their children. And schools say that they need to Google. And so we give them phones and say, Mommy, this is your phone. You can call me, you can what? We are starting something that we are not able to deal with in the future. Don't give a phone to a child until you ensure that they are properly sensitized on what a phone is about, on cybersecurity, on possibilities of addiction, on how to watch for addiction, how to know if there's a problem, how to respond. Now, behavior addictions just like in the medical, the physical illnesses catalog, for an illness to pass into, to be part of what is now called an illness, there is a process. And so there is a document or a book or a guide, we call it the DSM-5, that has all mental illnesses and the criteria for their diagnosis. That DSM still does not have behavior addictions in it, like pornography, gambling, masturbation, social media, TV, and any other addictions that are behavior addictions that we have. But gambling has been passed as an addictive problem. So we are looking at a time where, probably the next DSM, there would be gambling as an addiction and categorized in terms of the criteria for diagnosis and management within the DSM-5. But right now, there are therapies to deal with behavior addictions. There are therapies to support people with gambling addictions, because gambling and those behavior addictions, si kitu kidogo. It's a huge thing. I saw a young man who came to KNH. He had taken poison. Why did he take poison? Because he had gambled away money for his boss, and he didn't know what he's going to do with it. So he went and he drank those chemicals they used to clean. He was working in a cleaning company. And how did he get there? Because of his addiction. His wife says he comes home, he brings money, says this is for food, this is for rent. He's not a violent man. But the day his money for addiction is finished, he will be violent. He will be irritable. If his wife doesn't have it, he will be sick. Physiologically unwell, unable to function completely because he had become so addicted to gambling. What happens is that the things that we do that brings us some kind of joy, they activate a reward pathway in our brain, the place that releases dopamine so that you feel good. Now, when we have made that part to be activated not naturally, but by something we consume or an activity we engage in, it keeps on wanting more and more and more. And when it can't get that more, and there's no release of that substance in the brain, we're not able to be happy, we're not able to emotionally regulate, we get a lot of physiological symptoms out of that. So it's a concern. It has not been categorized yet, but already they have been identified, and there are therapies to support people with behavior addiction. Then there was a third one, brain chemistry. So you are asking what should be done, except from medical intervention. Now, I would say maybe one or two things. One, if it is chemical, a chemical intervention is very necessary. If something is lacking, then it has to be locally introduced to your system. So chemical interventions, medications for mental illnesses, very necessary. For someone in a depression and they're not able to make through, or there are some level that psychotherapy does not work yet, medication is very necessary to balance that chemistry. But there are other approaches to deal with that. In instances where maybe it's because of addictions or something that is chemical, then you can change behavior, and that behavior affects our thoughts and affects mood, and mood is all chemical. So when you work on changing behavior with resilience, you start retraining your brain to start reproducing something that had withheld maybe because of addiction, or you start retraining your brain to get a balance. Now, the period for that retraining needs a lot of resilience and a lot of resistance to temptations, either to give in or to give up. If you are confident that you can pull that through, it's okay. But there are extremes that only medication can help in. And I think I attended a seminar by one of the medical missionaries of our church, and they had a good presentation on foods that intervene on issues of mental health. So I think that can also be a way out. That should bring us to the end of our conversation this afternoon. And let me apologize, we are 27 minutes past the hour. But I would wish to end it there. I am thankful for the opportunity I had to speak today and to teach. And I trust in God that it's not in vain that there is a seed probably that has been planted and it shall grow and shall sprout into bounties. And there's a song we sing in my church that kama kulikuwa na ubaya, ibaki lakini mazuri. Yes. So I apologize if there is in any way that I have been offensive or if I handle myself in a way that is not standard according to Embakasi Church. I ask for apologies. I want to encourage each and every one of us that there is nothing that is impossible with God. We just need to grow some faith. And the good thing is, it is faith of Jesus. So when we ask him to encourage our faith and grow it, he will do it. And he shall provide a way for us in all our circumstances. Thank you so much, and may God bless you abundantly.